Hello there, and welcome to Earth's History, where we examine the possibility that human civilization isn't the beginning of intelligence on Earth, but rather a reboot, where we explore whether everything we've built, discovered, and achieved might be the second or third or 100th iteration of a pattern that has played out before, where we ask the most unsettling question of all: what if we're not pioneers blazing new trails, but rather travellers, retracing ancient footsteps we don't remember taking, rebuilding what was once built, rediscovering what was once known, replaying a script written long ago by a civilization that came before us, achieved everything we're achieving, made the same mistakes we're making, and then collapsed so completely that we inherited their world without inheriting their memory. If you've ever felt that human progress seems strangely familiar, as if we're remembering rather than inventing, if you've wondered why ancient civilizations possessed knowledge that seems too advanced for their supposed technological level, if you've noticed that human history contains mysterious gaps and discontinuities that standard narratives struggle to explain, if you've sensed that beneath our modern civilization lie layers of older civilizations buried and forgotten, and beneath those layers perhaps even older ones still, stretching back into a past so distant that all evidence has been erased except for the ghostly patterns we keep repeating, you're touching on one of the most profound possibilities in alternative history: that we are not the first technological civilization on Earth, but a reset, a reboot, a civilization rising from the ashes of our predecessors, unknowingly following their trajectory, destined perhaps to face the same fate they faced unless we recognize the pattern and break it. Wherever you are right now, I hope you're comfortable, settled, ready to contemplate the possibility that human history is not 10,000 years old, but potentially millions of years old, that we are not the original civilization but a reconstruction, that the inventions we celebrate as breakthroughs might be rediscoveries, that the catastrophes we fear might be cyclical events that have destroyed civilization before and might destroy it again, that our entire understanding of who we are and where we came from might be based on incomplete evidence and faulty assumptions, missing the deeper truth that we are living in a world shaped by our predecessors, walking paths they walked, making choices they made, heading toward conclusions they reached, in an eternal cycle of civilization rising, flourishing, falling, and rising again with no memory of previous iterations. If this exploration into humanity as a reset civilization changes how you see historical progress, if it makes you wonder whether our technologies and ideas are truly original or recovered from ancient sources, if it inspires you to look for evidence of previous cycles in geology, archaeology, mythology, and even in our own genetics and psychology, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone else who understands that the past might be far stranger and more cyclical than we've been taught, that time might not be a straight line of progress, but a spiral or circle, bringing us back to places we've been before even though we don't remember being there, so settle in. Let your breathing slow like the patient cycles of civilizations rising and falling across geological time. Let your mind expand to consider that everything you know about human history might be the latest chapter in a much longer story, that we might be amnesiacs rebuilding the world our ancestors built before some catastrophe destroyed it and erased our memory, that we might be the children or grandchildren or distant descendants of the first civilization, carrying their DNA, their psychological patterns, their tendencies and talents, destined to follow their path unless we recognize what we are and consciously choose a different direction. And let's begin our investigation into whether we, modern human civilization, are a reset of the first civilization, and what recognizing this would mean for understanding our past, our present, and our potential futures. Defining the reset hypothesis. Before examining evidence, let's clarify what we mean by reset and establish the framework we're investigating. The core reset hypothesis: modern human civilization, roughly the past 10,000 years of recorded history, from the agricultural revolution to present, is not the first technological civilization on Earth, but rather a reset, a rebuilding that follows the collapse of one or more previous advanced civilizations. Specifically, a first civilization existed on Earth at some point in the distant past, potentially hundreds of thousands to millions of years ago, that achieved technological and social complexity comparable to or exceeding our current level. The first civilization collapsed due to catastrophic events, natural disasters, war, environmental degradation, disease, or combinations thereof, resulting in near total destruction of their infrastructure, knowledge, and population. survivors or descendant populations regressed to primitive subsistence levels, losing most technological knowledge and cultural memory of the previous civilization. Over time, civilization rebuilt, either through the same population slowly redeveloping or through evolution migration of new populations, eventually reaching technological complexity again, creating what we call ancient civilizations: Sumer, Egypt, Indus Valley, etc., and eventually modern civilization. We are currently in a reset phase, unknowingly following similar developmental trajectories to the first civilization, potentially heading towards similar outcomes unless we recognize the pattern. Key distinctions: reset versus continuation. We're not proposing modern humans are direct cultural descendants of the first civilization with preserved knowledge. Rather, we're suggesting biological and perhaps limited cultural descent, with a hard reset where most knowledge was lost, requiring redevelopment from basic principles. Reset versus extraterrestrial. The first civilization in this hypothesis is terrestrial, evolved on Earth, whether human ancestors or a separate species, not aliens visiting from elsewhere. Single versus multiple resets. The hypothesis could involve single reset, one previous civilization, one collapse, one rebuilding, yes. Multiple resets, many previous civilizations, each collapsing and being replaced by the next in cycles potentially extending millions of years. Types of reset mechanisms: catastrophic reset, sudden violent destruction, asteroid impact, supervolcanic eruption, nuclear war, rapid climate change, that kills most of the population and destroys infrastructure within years to centuries. Gradual reset, slower collapse over centuries to millennia, resource depletion, climate change, social disintegration, demographic decline, where civilization gradually loses complexity and knowledge. Cyclical reset, regular predictable cycles driven by astronomical or geological rhythms, ice age cycles, precession-related climate changes, periodic cosmic impacts that repeatedly destroy and rebuild civilization. Selective reset, collapse affecting some regions while others survive, followed by dark ages, where technological knowledge is lost even though populations continue existing. Timeline. Considerations. For the reset hypothesis to work, we need to consider: how long ago was the first civilization? Recent, 10,000 to 100,000 years ago. More evidence would survive, but mainstream archaeology hasn't found it, requiring explanation for why. Ancient, 100,000 to 1 million years ago. Evidence would be largely destroyed, but some traces might remain in deep geological strata or in human genetics, culture. Very ancient, 100 million years ago. Almost no direct evidence would survive. Detection would require subtle geological or isotopic signatures. How complete was the reset? Total reset. All knowledge lost, survivors reduced to Stone Age conditions, complete cultural amnesia. Partial reset. Some knowledge preserved through oral tradition, primitive records, or isolated surviving communities that maintained limited technology. Multiple severity levels. Different resets throughout history with varying completeness. Some total, some partial. How many resets have occurred? Single. One previous civilization, one collapse, current civilization. Few, 2 to 5. Several cycles over hundreds of thousands to millions of years. Many, 10 plus. Regular. Cyclical pattern with civilization rising and falling repeatedly. Countless. Continuous cycle extending potentially hundreds of millions of years with uncountable iterations. With this framework established, let's examine evidence that might support the reset hypothesis. Evidence in human genetics. Are we survivors? If modern humans descended from survivors of a collapsed advanced civilization, our genetics might preserve evidence of this history. Population bottlenecks. Human genetic diversity is remarkably low compared to many species. Studies of mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome DNA show that all living humans descend from relatively small ancestral populations that existed within the past 100,000 to 200,000 years. Toba catastrophe, 74,000 years ago. The Toba supervolcano in Indonesia produced the largest volcanic eruption in the past 2 million years. The volcanic winter hypothesis suggests that global temperatures dropped by 3.5 degrees for years, potentially reducing human population to 3,000 to 10,000 individuals. Genetic evidence, low genetic diversity consistent with small ancestral population, evidence of population expansion after 74,000 years ago. Mitochondrial Eve dated to roughly 150,000, 200,000 years ago. Y chromosome, Adam, dated to roughly 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. Standard interpretation. These bottlenecks represent normal evolutionary history, small founding populations in Africa, expansion and migration, periodic population reductions due to climate change or disease. Reset interpretation. The bottlenecks might represent survivors of civilizational collapse. If a technologically advanced human civilization existed 100,000 plus years ago and was reduced to small survived populations by catastrophe, those survivors' genetics would look exactly like what we observe: low diversity, recent common ancestors, evidence of population expansion from small numbers. The key question: can we distinguish between naturally small ancestral population and reduced population after civilizational collapse? Potential genetic signatures of reset. Selection for specific traits. If survivors faced particular challenges, radiation exposure after nuclear catastrophe, specific diseases, need to survive in harsh post-apocalyptic conditions, we might see genetic selection for traits helpful in those conditions. However, detecting this requires knowing what traits to look for and distinguishing post-collapse selection from normal evolutionary selection. Loss of diversity in specific genes. If the first civilization had genetic engineering technology and modified their genome, the collapse would eliminate most modified lineages, with only natural baseline humans surviving. We'd see sudden loss of genetic variants that existed pre-collapse. However, this is nearly impossible to detect without ancient DNA from pre-collapse populations. Archaic introgression. Anomalies. Modern humans carry DNA from Neanderthals, Denisovans, and unknown archaic humans. Some regions of introgressed DNA show patterns suggesting selection. They were beneficial and increased in frequency. Could any of these represent genetic material from first civilization populations that had diverged genetically from baseline humans? Unlikely, but theoretically. If the first civilization practiced genetic engineering on themselves, some modified genes might have been advantageous enough that they persisted in survivor populations and appear today as archaic introgression, because they differ from standard human baseline. However, this is highly speculative. Mitochondrial DNA patterns. Mitochondrial DNA passes through maternal lines and mutates at predictable rates, allowing reconstruction of maternal ancestry. All human mitochondrial DNA traces back to mitochondrial Eve, a woman who lived roughly 150,000 and 200,000 years ago. This doesn't mean she was the only woman alive then, but rather that her mitochondrial lineage is the only one that survived to present, with all other contemporary maternal lineages going extinct. Reset consideration. If a catastrophic collapse occurred after 200,000 years ago, killing most humans but leaving small survivor populations, mitochondrial Eve might have lived before or after the collapse. Before collapse. She's part of the first civilization population. Her descendants survived the collapse after collapse. She's among the survivor population after collapse. All pre-collapse maternal lineages died out. We can't distinguish these scenarios without additional information. Y chromosome. Adam. Similar to mitochondrial Eve, all human Y chromosomes pass through paternal lines, traced to Y chromosome Adam roughly 200,000, 300,000 years ago. Interestingly, Y chromosome Adam predates mitochondrial Eve, which seems counterintuitive but is explained by random lineage extinction. Some maternal lineages from earlier times went extinct, while paternal lineages from even earlier times survived by chance. Reset interpretation. The timing difference might reflect complex population dynamics during or after a collapse, male and female populations experiencing different selection pressures or survival rates during catastrophic conditions. Cognitive and psychological uniformity. All human populations worldwide share fundamental cognitive architecture: language capability, abstract reasoning, symbolic thinking, mathematical intuition, social cognition, etc. This uniformity suggests either standard interpretation, recent common ancestry past 200,000 years, with cognitive traits evolving before population split, reset interpretation. All modern humans descend from survivors of the first civilization who possessed these cognitive traits, which then spread as survivor populations expanded. The data doesn't distinguish. Between these interpretations, both predict the observed uniformity. Neanderthal and Denisovan introgression. Modern non-African humans carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, and some populations, Melanesians, Aboriginal Australians, Denisovans, carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA. Standard interpretation: Homo sapiens interbred with archaic humans as they migrated out of Africa 50,000, 100,000 years ago. Alternative reset interpretation: Could Neanderthals and Denisovans represent divergent lineages from the first civilization? Perhaps different populations that adapted to different environments or diverged culturally, genetically, during the civilization's existence, then survived the collapse in different regions. Problem with this interpretation: Neanderthals diverged from modern humans roughly 500,000 to 700,000 years ago based on genetic analysis, before any plausible first civilization timeframe, so they likely represent natural evolutionary divergence rather than first civilization offshoots. However, some researchers propose that anatomically modern humans existed much earlier than mainstream timeline suggests, 300,000 years ago. If modern human morphology is older, say 1 million plus years, there's more time for civilizational development, collapse, and rebuilding. Accelerated evolution or trait preservation. Some human traits seem to have evolved rapidly in recent evolutionary time. Light skin in Europeans and Asians evolved within past 10,000, 30,000 years as adaptation to lower UV at higher latitudes. Lactose tolerance evolved within past 10,000 years in populations with dairy farming. High altitude adaptations evolved in Tibetan and Andean populations within past 10,000, 30,000 years. Standard interpretation: Rapid evolution due to strong selection pressure from environmental changes or cultural practices, farming, herding, high-altitude living. Reset consideration: Some traits that appear recently evolved might actually be reversions to older traits that existed in the first civilization, but were lost during bottleneck, then re-emerged through selection or mutation. Distinguishing new evolution from reversion to ancestral states is difficult with genetic data alone. Conclusion on genetic evidence: Human genetics shows evidence of population bottlenecks, relatively recent common ancestry and low diversity, all consistent with either natural small ancestral populations or survivor populations after civilizational collapse. The genetic data doesn't prove reset, but also doesn't disprove it. Genetics alone cannot distinguish between these scenarios without additional corroborating evidence from archaeology, geology, or other sources. Archaeological anomalies: out of place, sophistication. If we're a reset civilization rebuilding after a collapse, we might expect to find anomalously advanced artifacts or knowledge in ancient civilizations, remnants, or rediscoveries from pre-collapse. Discontinuities in technological development, jumps in capability suggesting knowledge transfer rather than gradual invention. Lost capabilities where ancient civilizations could do things later. Civilizations couldn't, knowledge lost during reset. Let's examine specific examples. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, around 600 BCE. This site revolutionized archaeology when discovered because it predates agriculture and permanent settlements by thousands of years, according to standard chronology. Features: massive T-shaped limestone pillars, 10-20 tons each. Sophisticated carving with animal reliefs, precise circular arrangements. Multiple layers, older buried, newer built on top, dated to 11,600 years ago, 9,600 BCE. No evidence of habitation, purely ceremonial, ritual standard interpretation. Hunter-gatherers created complex religious architecture before developing agriculture, overturning the assumption that cities came before temples. Reset interpretation. Göbekli Tepe might represent survivor knowledge, built by descendants of first civilization who retained enough knowledge, organizational ability to create monuments, but not full technological civilization rediscovery site, location of preserved pre-collapse knowledge or artifacts that motivated construction. Last remnant, terminal monument of a collapsing civilization, buried as conditions worsened, with builders themselves becoming hunter-gatherers shortly after key anomaly. The sophistication appears suddenly in the archaeological record with no clear developmental precursors, then the tradition seemingly disappears. Exactly what we'd expect if knowledge was inherited from a previous civilization then gradually lost. Ancient precision. Multiple ancient sites display precision that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. Great Pyramid measurements, base level to within 2.1 cm across 230 meters. Sides aligned to cardinal directions within 0.05 degrees. Blocks fitted with sub-millimeter precision in some areas. Internal chambers constructed with sophisticated core belling and pressure relief systems. Pumapunku, Bolivia. Diorite and andesite blocks carved with perfect right angles. Complex interlocking shapes that fit together like modern prefab components. Precision suggesting advanced measuring tools and cutting technology. Baalbek Trilithon, Lebanon. 800-ton stones moved and precisely placed in foundation technology, for moving such weight not fully understood even today. Standard explanation. Skilled craftsmen using simple tools, copper chisels, sand abrasives, wooden rollers, or arc ramps, extensive time, and large labour forces could achieve these results through patience and skill. Reset interpretation. These constructions might represent inherited knowledge, techniques passed down from first civilization survivors, or discovered in preserved texts, diagrams recovered, tools, actual first civilization tools, made from durable materials, discovered and used by ancient peoples. Reverse engineering. Ancient peoples discovered first civilization structures and attempted to replicate them, achieving partial success. Critical question. Why do these precision achievements appear sporadically in history, present in some ancient sites, absent in others, present early then seemingly lost? This pattern fits better with recovered knowledge being incompletely transmitted than with linear technological development. Ancient astronomical knowledge. Various ancient civilizations demonstrated astronomical knowledge that seems disproportionate to their supposed technological level. Precession of the equinoxes. Earth's axis wobbles like a spinning top, completing one cycle every 2,120 years. This causes the position of stars at equinoxes to shift slowly, 1 degree per 72 years. Precession was supposedly discovered by Greek astronomer Hipparchus around 150 BCE. However, ancient Egyptian calendar systems show awareness of cycles longer than human lifespan. Hindu yugas, cosmic ages, encode periods matching precession cycles. Mayan long count calendar track cycles, seemingly related to precession. Various ancient myths reference 72 or 432, 72-6, or other numbers mathematically related to precession. Problem. Detecting precession requires precise astronomical observations over many generations and advanced mathematical analysis. Why would multiple ancient cultures encode this knowledge before it was supposedly discovered? Reset explanation. Knowledge of precession survived from first civilization astronomy, encoded in mythology and calendar systems, even though the observational technology needed to originally discover it had been lost. Antikythera mechanism, Greece, 100 BCE. This bronze device recovered from a shipwreck contains at least 30 meshing bronze gears, creating an astronomical calculator that predicted planetary positions, eclipses, and Olympic Games timing. Significance. Nothing remotely comparable exists in the archaeological record for over 1,000 years after this device. It represents a level of mechanical sophistication that seems to appear from nowhere and then disappears again. Standard explanation. Ancient Greeks had sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge. The Antikythera mechanism proves they also had advanced clockwork engineering, but this knowledge was lost during the decline of Hellenistic civilization and wasn't redeveloped until medieval European clockmaking. Reset interpretation. The Antikythera mechanism might represent recovered design, based on first civilization mechanical principles discovered in preserved texts or physical examples. Degraded technology, simplified version of more sophisticated first civilization devices. Peak of recovery, represents highest point of knowledge recovery from first civilization sources before knowledge was lost again in subsequent societal collapse. The Baghdad Battery, Mesopotamia, 250 BCE. Clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods that could function as primitive batteries if filled with acidic solution. Controversy. Their actual purpose is debated. Mainstream archaeology considers them scroll storage containers, while alternative researchers claim they're batteries. If batteries, they'd represent electrochemical knowledge 2,000 years before batteries were supposedly invented in 1800 CE. Reset relevance. If ancient Mesopotamians had electrochemical knowledge, where did it come from? Either independent discovery that was lost and had to be rediscovered in 1800s inherited knowledge from earlier civilization. Either way, the pattern of discovery, loss. Rediscovery is consistent with reset hypothesis. Genetic engineering evidence. Some researchers claim ancient texts describe genetic engineering. Sumerian creation myths. Describe gods creating humans through mixing divine clay with blood essence. Potentially metaphorical description of genetic engineering. Biblical Genesis. Nephilim, giants. Born from sons of God and daughters of men. Potentially genetic hybrid offspring, Indian epics. Describe various hybrid creatures and unusual births. Potentially genetic manipulation. Standard interpretation. Pure mythology, symbolic stories about human origins and divine intervention, not describing actual genetic engineering. Reset interpretation. These myths might preserve distorted memories of first civilization genetic engineering capabilities, described in mythological terms by descendants who no longer understood the science. Problem: these interpretations are highly speculative and unfalsifiable. Any mythology can be reinterpreted as describing advanced technology if you're creative enough. This doesn't make it true. Unexplained knowledge transmission. Certain ideas and technologies appear in multiple ancient civilizations with no clear transmission pathway. Pyramid construction. Egypt, Mesoamerica, China, Indonesia all developed pyramid architecture independently according to mainstream archaeology. Astronomical alignments. Ancient structures worldwide align with solstices, equinoxes, or specific stars, suggesting widespread astronomical sophistication. Mathematical constants. Pi, phi, golden ratio, and other mathematical relationships appear encoded in ancient architecture globally. Flood myths. Over 200 cultures worldwide have flood narratives, suggesting either universal human experience of flooding, standard explanation, common origin from an actual global catastrophe, reset explanation, standard explanation, convergent cultural evolution. Humans worldwide independently developed similar ideas because they're useful, or because human cognition naturally tends towards certain forms. Pyramids are structurally stable. Astronomical observations are useful for calendars, agriculture. Mathematical relationships are inherent in nature. Reset explanation. These shared elements represent fragmented cultural memory of first civilization achievements, preserved through oral tradition and mythology, manifesting in similar forms when civilizations rebuilt. Which explanation is correct? The data supports both interpretations. Convergent evolution is a real phenomenon. Birds and bats independently evolved flight. Cameras and eyes evolved independently. But shared ancestry is also real. All mammals have similar skeletal structures because of common ancestry. Distinguishing convergence from shared heritage requires additional evidence. Geological evidence. Catastrophic resets. If civilizations collapse due to catastrophic events, we should find geological evidence of disasters capable of destroying advanced civilizations. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth's climate suddenly reverted to Ice Age conditions, the Younger Dryas period, lasting about 100–200 years before abruptly warming again. Impact hypothesis, proposed by Firestone, West and others. A comet or asteroid impacted or airburst over North America, causing massive wildfires across North America, charcoal layer in sediments, melting of ice sheets causing sea level rise and climate disruption, extinction of Pleistocene megafauna, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, population collapse of Clovis culture, Paleo-Indians. Evidence cited: sediment layer dated to 12,800 years ago containing nanodiamonds, iridium, spherules, and other impact indicators, meltwater pulse in ocean sediments, megafaunal extinctions synchronized with event widespread charcoal layer indicating massive fires. Controversy. The impact hypothesis is hotly debated. Mainstream geology questions whether the evidence actually indicates impact versus other causes. Some proposed evidence, nanodiamonds, spherules, might have non-impact origins. Status as of 2024. The hypothesis remains controversial but has gained some acceptance. Additional research has found more evidence supporting impact, but it's not universally accepted. Reset relevance. If a major impact occurred 12,800 years ago, it could have destroyed an advanced first civilization existing at that time. Timeline. Before 12,800 years ago, first civilization at peak. 12,800 years ago, catastrophic impact destroys civilization, causes mass casualties, destroys infrastructure. 12,800, 11,600 years ago. Younger Dryas period, survivors struggling in harsh climate. 11,600 years ago. Climate ameliorates, survivors begin rebuilding. Göbekli Tepe constructed 10,000 years ago onward. Agriculture develops, cities emerge, civilization rebuilds toward current level. This timeline fits remarkably well with certain archaeological anomalies. Göbekli Tepe's sudden appearance. Flood myths dated to this period. Rapid development of agriculture after 10,000 BCE. Toba supervolcanic eruption, 74,000 years ago. The Toba eruption in Indonesia was the largest volcanic eruption in the past 2 million years, ejecting 2,800 cubic kilometers of material, 2 orders of magnitude larger than any historical eruption. Effects. Volcanic winter. Global temperature dropped 3 Fathom for years, possibly decades. Massive disruption to ecosystems globally. Human population genetic bottleneck, discussed earlier. Possible volcanic winter lasting 6 to 10 years. Reset relevance. If a first civilization existed 74,000 years ago, Toba would have devastated it. Direct destruction in Southeast Asia, volcanic winter, collapsing agriculture globally. Famine, disease, social collapse. Infrastructure abandoned as populations migrated seeking survival. Survivors would be reduced to small bands, losing most technological knowledge. The genetic bottleneck we observe might represent post-Toba survivors rebuilding population. Timeline. Before 74,000 years ago. First civilization exists for unknown duration. 74,000 years ago. Toba eruption causes catastrophic collapse. 74,000 downs. 10,000 years ago. Long period of population recovery. Gradual loss of first civilization knowledge. 10,000 years ago. Agriculture rediscovered and reinvented. Civilization rebuilds. Problem. If the first civilization existed 74,000 years ago, almost no archaeological evidence would survive. 66,000 years of erosion, sedimentation, tectonic activity would destroy nearly everything. This makes the hypothesis difficult to test. Other potential catastrophic events, Heinrich events, periodic massive iceberg discharge events during glacial periods, causing rapid sea level rise and climate change. Could any have destroyed coastal civilizations? Magnetic pole reversals. Earth's magnetic poles reverse periodically. Last reversal was 80,000 years ago. During reversal, magnetic field weakens dramatically, increasing radiation exposure. Could a reversal have damaged a very ancient first civilization? Solar superflares. The Sun occasionally produces massive flares. A direct hit from a Carrington event level, 1859 CE, or stronger flare could destroy modern technological civilization. Could past superflares have destroyed previous civilizations? Pandemics. Disease could collapse civilizations without leaving obvious geological signatures, only mass graves and sudden demographic collapse. DNA from ancient pathogens might preserve evidence. Self-inflicted collapse. The first civilization might have destroyed itself through nuclear war, would leave radioactive isotopes, but half-lives matter. Most would decay beyond detection after thousands of years. Biological weapons. Engineered pandemic could kill most population without destroying infrastructure. Environmental collapse. Climate change, resource depletion, pollution could cause gradual collapse. AI catastrophe. Speculative, but if first civilization created AI that turned against them, collapse could be rapid geological signatures. Nuclear war might leave detectable isotopic anomalies. Plutonium-244 has 80 million year half-life. Biological or AI catastrophe would leave minimal geological signature. Cyclical catastrophes. Some researchers propose regular cyclical disasters. Precession-related climate change. Earth's axial precession, just 920-year cycle, affects climate by changing seasonal distribution of solar radiation. Could this create regular climate crises that collapse civilizations every vast and 13,000 years? Half precession cycle. Galactic cosmic ray cycles. As solar system orbits galaxy, it passes through spiral arms with higher cosmic ray exposure. Could this cause periodic radiation damage or climate effects that collapse civilizations? Periodic comet-asteroid showers. If Earth periodically passes through debris clouds in its orbit, impact rates would cycle, with periodic increased impact risk. Evidence: these cyclical catastrophe theories are mostly speculative. Some patterns exist in climate records, Ice Ages cycle with Milankovitch cycles, but clear evidence for civilization-destroying cycles is lacking. Reset relevance. If catastrophes cycle regularly, civilization might repeatedly rise and fall in sync with these cycles. We're living in a habitable period between catastrophes, just as previous civilizations did before their catastrophes arrived. Mythological memory. Stories of previous worlds. If we're a reset civilization, survivors of the first civilization might have passed down memories of the previous world through oral tradition, eventually becoming mythology. Let's examine myths that might preserve historical memories. Ages of Man, Greek. Hesiod, 700 BCE, described 5 ages of humanity. Golden Age, humans lived in harmony, no labor needed. Eternal Spring, no aging or disease, ruled by Kronos, Saturn. Eventually passed away peacefully like sleep. Silver Age, inferior to Golden Age, childhood lasted 100 years, but adulthood was short and violent. Zeus destroyed them for impiety. Bronze Age, terrible and strong men, loved war, weapons and houses of bronze, destroyed themselves through violence and warfare. Heroic Age, demigods and heroes, Heracles, Achilles, etc. Many died in great wars. Trojan War, Theban Wars. Survivors sent to islands of the blessed. Iron Age, Current Age, constant toil, hardship, moral decline, will eventually be destroyed by Zeus when humans become completely corrupt. Standard interpretation. Mythological framework explaining human moral decline and hardship, not describing actual historical periods. Reset interpretation. These ages might represent Golden Age, peak of first civilization, advanced technology making life easy, long, lifespans through medical technology. Silver Age, decline phase, civilization still advanced but social problems emerging. Bronze Age, collapse phase, warfare, violent competition for resources, self-destruction. Heroic Age, early recovery phase, remnants of first civilization still present, survivors with retained knowledge viewed as heroes or demigods. Iron Age, current civilization, struggling to rebuild, lacking first civilization's advantages. The pattern matches a civilizational collapse narrative. Peak, decline, catastrophic collapse, gradual recovery, current state. Hindu yugas, ages. Hindu cosmology describes 4 yugas in each cycle. Satya Yuga, Age of Truth, lasts 628,000 years. Virtue reigns, humans are long-lived and righteous, no disease or suffering. Treta Yuga, lasts 1,326,000 years. Virtue declines to 75%, vice appears, lifespan reduces, rituals begin. Dvapara Yuga, lasts 864,000 years. Virtue and vice equal, 50-50. Disease appears, lifespan further reduced, wars increase. Kali Yuga, lasts 432,000 years. Vice dominates, 75%. Virtue minimal, short lifespans. Moral degradation, suffering. Current Age, began through Sun 2 BCE. After Kali Yuga ends, cycle repeats destruction, then new Satya Yuga begins. Standard interpretation, mythological philosophical framework describing cycles of moral decline, not historical periods. Reset interpretation, the yugas might represent compressed or metaphorically extended accounts of civilization cycles. Satya Yuga, first civilization at peak, advanced technology, long lifespans. Prosperous Treta, Dvapara Yugas, long decline phase, civilizational problems accumulate in Kali Yuga, post-collapse recovery. We're living in the aftermath of first civilization's fall, still in degraded state compared to their peak timescales. The Yuga durations, hundreds of thousands to millions of years, are implausibly long for human civilizations as we understand them, either symbolic / metaphorical rather than literal durations, based on faulty transmission, numbers corrupted over millennia of oral tradition, describing something other than human civilizations, cosmic cycles, geological ages. However, the progression, peak, decline, collapse, reset, matches what we'd expect if myth preserved memory of civilizational cycles. 4. 5 worlds, Mesoamerican. Aztec and Mayan mythology describes previous worlds, each destroyed by catastrophe. First sun, jaguar. Sun, destroyed by jaguars eating inhabitants. Second sun, wind sun, destroyed by hurricanes and winds. Third sun, rain sun, destroyed by rain of fire. Fourth sun, water sun, destroyed by flood. Fifth sun, current world, destined to be destroyed by earthquakes. Hopi tradition similarly describes emergence through 4 worlds, each destroyed. First world, destroyed by fire. Second world, destroyed by ice. Third world, destroyed by flood. Fourth world, current. World standard interpretation. Mythological explanations for natural disasters and catastrophes. Creation narratives, moral teachings. Reset interpretation. These worlds might represent successive civilizations, each collapsed by different catastrophe. The first civilization having itself gone through cycles before final collapse. Cultural memory of multiple catastrophic events during first civilization's decline. Specific catastrophes mentioned: fire, flood, wind, ice. Match actual catastrophic events: volcanic eruptions, fire, post-ice age flooding, flood, storms, just climate change, wind, ice ages, ice. Atlantis, Plato, 360 BCE. Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, describe Atlantis, advanced island civilization 9,000 years before Plato, 600 BCE. Sophisticated architecture, technology, naval power. Eventually became corrupt and aggressive, destroyed in single day and night by earthquakes and floods, sinking into ocean standard interpretation, fictional story invented by Plato for philosophical purposes, possibly inspired by real events. Minoan civilization destroyed by Thera eruption, 600 BCE, but not describing actual historical Atlantis. Reset interpretation. Atlantis represents cultural memory of first civilization, or part of it. Timeline, 9600 BCE, 11600 years ago, corresponds roughly to Younger Dryas period and Göbekli Tepe construction technology. Described as advanced civilization matches. First civilization destruction. Sudden catastrophic destruction matches impact hypothesis or other catastrophic collapse. Transmission. Story passed through Egyptian priests, according to Plato, suggests ancient source, not Plato's invention problem. No archaeological evidence for Atlantis has been found despite extensive searching. This could mean it never existed, standard view. It's completely submerged and we haven't found it, proponent view. It's metaphorical for first civilization generally, not specific location, reset view. The flood, global. Over 200 cultures worldwide have flood myths, with remarkable similarities. Divine decision to destroy humanity for corruption, sin warning, given to righteous individual/family survival, through boat ark animals saved mountain landfall after waters recede, repopulation of earth. Famous examples: Noah, biblical Quranic, Utnapishtim, Gilgamesh, Deucalion, Greek, Manu, Hindu, various Native American, Aboriginal, Pacific Islander, African flood narratives. Standard interpretation: universal human experience of destructive flooding, river valleys, storm surges, tsunamis, post-ice age sea level rise, leads independently to flood myths in different cultures. Reset interpretation: flood myths preserve memory of actual global catastrophe that destroyed first civilization. Post-ice age flooding, 10,000, 20,000 years ago, melting ice raised sea levels 120 meters, submerging coastal areas where most civilizations existed. Younger Dryas flooding, impact-induced ice sheet melting caused rapid sea level rise. Black Sea flood, 7,300 years ago, Mediterranean breached natural dam, raising Black Sea level 100 meters catastrophically. The widespread nature of flood myths suggests either deeply embedded in human psychology, we fear drownings, floods universally. Common origin, all myths derive from single historical event passed down and spread globally. If reset is true, flood myths might be the clearest cultural memory of first civilization's destruction. Builder gods and culture. Heroes. Many mythologies describe gods or culture heroes who taught humans civilization. Prometheus, Greek, stole fire from gods and gave it to humans, teaching them technology and arts. Thoth, Egyptian. God of wisdom, who invented writing, mathematics, astronomy, taught humans knowledge. Quetzalcoatl, Mesoamerican. Feathered serpent god who brought agriculture, arts, civilization to humans. Oannes, Mesopotamian. Fishman who emerged from sea daily to teach astronomy, mathematics, arts, then returned to ocean at night. Viracocha, Andean. Creator god who travelled teaching humans agriculture, architecture, social order. Standard interpretation. Mythological explanations for cultural development, personifications of civilization's emergence. Reset interpretation. These figures might represent first civilization survivors who taught less advanced humans after collapsed cultural memory of first civilization's existence, personified as gods, because their technology seemed magical to descendants, recovered knowledge from first civilization sources attributed to divine teaching. Key pattern. These beings are described as teaching humans knowledge that humans supposedly didn't have, suggesting knowledge transfer from external source, first civilization, rather than independent development. The Watchers, Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch, Jewish apocryphal text, 300 BCE, describes Watchers, angels who descended to earth, interbred with human women, creating Nephilim giants, and taught humans forbidden knowledge, metallurgy and weapons, cosmetics and enchantments, astrology and astronomy, writing and knowledge. God punished the Watchers for revealing this knowledge and for corrupting humanity. The Nephilim became violent and corrupt. God sent the flood to destroy them. Standard interpretation. Religious mythology about fallen angels, metaphor for human sin and divine punishment. Reset interpretation. The Watchers might represent first civilization humans who possessed advanced knowledge, viewed as angelic by less advanced humans. Interbreeding. Literal genetic mixing between first civilization survivors and other human populations. Forbidden knowledge. Technology that caused first civilization's collapse being passed to new humans. The flood. Actual catastrophe that destroyed. First civilization Nephilim. Hybrid offspring or first civilization people themselves described as giants due to superior nutrition, health, longevity. This interpretation is highly speculative but shows how myths can be reread as potentially encoding historical events. Pattern recognition. Across global mythologies, consistent themes emerge. Previous ages, worlds, more perfect than current age, progressive moral and physical decline over time, catastrophic destruction of previous worlds. Divine or heroic beings teaching humans civilization, warnings that current world will also be destroyed. These patterns support reset hypothesis. If we're rebuilding after first civilization's collapse, we'd expect myths preserving. Memory of first civilization's peak, golden age. Memory of decline and collapse, subsequent ages. Memory of catastrophe, flood, fire, other disasters. Memory of knowledge transmission, gods teaching humans. Alternatively, these patterns might just represent universal human concerns, mortality, suffering, desire for better past, expressed through mythology with no historical basis. Distinguishing myth from history requires corroborating evidence from archaeology, geology, or other sources. Mythology alone can't prove reset. Technological echoes, rediscovery patterns. If we're a reset civilization, we might expect our technological development to show patterns suggesting rediscovery rather than pure invention. 1. Suspiciously rapid development. Some technologies developed remarkably quickly, once discovered. Writing systems. Multiple independent writing systems, Sumerian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Chinese characters, Mesoamerican glyphs, emerged within a few thousand years, 3500, 1500 BCE, across the world with no clear evolutionary precursors. Fully formed systems appeared with minimal development time. Standard explanation. Once the concept of writing was developed, it spread rapidly or was independently invented because the need, record-keeping for complex societies, drove innovation. Reset possibility. Writing systems might be rediscoveries of first civilization writing, adapted to local languages. The rapid development and sophisticated structure of early writing suggests possible template or inspiration from older sources. Metallurgy. Copper smelting appeared 5000 BCE in multiple locations. Anatolia, Iran, Egypt, seemingly simultaneously. Bronze, copper-tin alloy, appeared 300 BCE. Iron smelting by 1200 BCE. Standard explanation. Gradual discovery through experimentation. Humans observed ore-bearing rocks in fires, experimented with smelting, developed techniques. Reset possibility. Metallurgical knowledge might be recovered from first civilization texts, or through discovering their metal artifacts and reverse engineering production methods. Mathematics. Advanced mathematical concepts appeared early in multiple civilizations. Babylonians used base 60 mathematics and Pythagorean theorem before Pythagoras. Egyptians used sophisticated geometry for surveying and construction. Indians developed zero and decimal system. Mayans independently developed zero. The question: why do sophisticated mathematical systems appear so early and in such developed form? Are humans naturally mathematical, standard view, or were they recovering mathematical knowledge from earlier sources, reset view? 2. Lost and rediscovered technologies. Throughout history, technologies were developed, lost, then rediscovered. Roman concrete. Romans created concrete, opus caementicium, that could set underwater and was more durable than modern concrete. Formula was lost after Western Roman Empire fell. Modern concrete wasn't as good until 20th century. Greek fire. Byzantine Empire's naval weapon. Liquid that burned on water couldn't be extinguished with water. Formula lost. Modern recreations are uncertain. Damascus steel. Medieval Middle Eastern swords with distinctive patterns and exceptional strength. Production method lost after 18th century. Modern recreations approximate but don't fully replicate original. Stradivarius violins, Antonio Stradivari's violins, early 1700s, have sound quality that hasn't been fully replicated. Whether this represents truly lost knowledge or romanticization is debated. Pattern. Knowledge loss and difficult rediscovery is common even in recorded history. If this happens across centuries during documented periods, how much more knowledge might be lost across millennia or millions of years? Reset relevance. These examples prove that technological knowledge can be completely lost and require rediscovery. If modern technologies represent rediscovery of first civilization capabilities, the pattern would look exactly like what we observe: sporadic development, sometimes appearing, sometimes disappearing, sometimes being rediscovered. 3. Convergent invention or rediscovery. Many technologies were invented multiple times independently. The wheel appeared in Mesopotamia, 3500 BCE, but also independently developed in Americas, used for toys, not transportation due to lack of draft animals. Agriculture, developed independently in multiple locations: Fertile Crescent, China, Mesoamerica, Andes, New Guinea, Sub-Saharan Africa, around 10,000 or 8,000 years ago. Pyramids, built independently by Egyptians, Mesoamericans, Chinese, and others. Standard explanation: convergent evolution. Humans worldwide independently developed similar solutions to similar problems, because these solutions are effective and human cognition tends towards certain forms. Reset alternative. These independent inventions might all be rediscoveries from first civilization knowledge encoded in oral traditions preserved through catastrophe. Physical artifacts discovered and reverse-engineered genetic or psychological predispositions, descendants of first civilization subconsciously recreating their ancestors' inventions. Distinguishing these explanations is difficult. Both predict similar technologies appearing in multiple locations. Convergence is a real phenomenon. Flight evolved independently in insects, birds, bats, pterosaurs. But shared heritage is also real. Without additional evidence, we can't definitively say whether convergence or rediscovery explains these patterns. 4. Ancient knowledge of modern discoveries. Some ancient texts describe concepts that were supposedly unknown until modern science. Atomic theory. Greek philosopher Democritus, 400 BCE, proposed that matter consists of indivisible atoms. This was supposedly pure philosophy, not based on evidence, yet it's fundamentally correct. Matter does consist of atoms. Reset question. Did Democritus invent atomic theory through pure reasoning, or was he preserving knowledge from earlier sources that had actually observed atomic structure through technology we don't associate with ancient Greece? Heliocentrism. Aristarchus, 270 BCE, proposed that Earth orbits the Sun, but this idea was rejected. The heliocentric model wasn't widely accepted until Copernicus, 1523 CE, and Galileo, early 1600s. Reset question. How did Aristarchus arrive at the correct model without telescopes or modern observational tools? Pure reasoning from planetary motion observations, or knowledge preserved from first civilization astronomy? Evolution. Some ancient Greek philosophers, Anaximander, Empedocles, proposed ideas resembling evolution, species changing over time, survival of the fittest. Germ theory. The Sushruta Samhita, Indian medical text, 600 Lasls BCE, describes invisible organisms causing disease thousands of years before microscopes allowed observation of bacteria. These examples could be lucky guesses that happen to be correct, brilliant reasoning from limited evidence, preserved knowledge from first civilization sources. We can't definitively distinguish these possibilities. 5. Technological stagnation and sudden advancement. Human history shows long periods of technological stagnation, followed by sudden advancement. Stone Age lasted millions of years with minimal technological change. Stone tools remained similar from 2.5 million years ago until 10,000 years ago. Agricultural Revolution, done 10,000 BCE. Sudden shift to agriculture, permanent settlements, population explosion. Bronze Age, 300 BCE. Rapid development of metallurgy, writing, cities, trade networks. Iron Age, stump of 100 BCE. Ironworking spread, creating new civilizations and empires. Medieval stagnation, 500–1400 CE in Europe, saw relatively slow technological progress. Renaissance or scientific revolution, 1400–1700 CE. Explosive advancement in art, science, technology, exploration. Industrial Revolution, 1700s, 1800s. Rapid mechanization, fossil fuel use, mass production. Information Age, 1900s present. Electronics, computing, internet, space exploration, genetic engineering. Pattern, long stability, sudden change, new stability, sudden change. Standard explanation. Technological advancement is driven by population growth allowing specialization, accumulated knowledge reaching critical mass, environmental pressures requiring innovation, cultural factors, exchange of ideas, competition, reset interpretation. Periods of rapid advancement might represent rediscovery events, finding first civilization knowledge caches or artifacts. Knowledge threshold, rebuilding enough capacity to understand preserved first civilization information. Memory activation, reaching development levels that trigger cultural memories or genetic predispositions from first civilization heritage. The agricultural revolution is particularly suspicious. After 200,000 plus years of humans anatomically identical to us living as hunter-gatherers, agriculture suddenly appeared independently in multiple locations within a few thousand years. Why? Standard. Climate stabilization after Ice Age made agriculture practical. Reset. First civilization practiced agriculture. Knowledge survived in oral traditions or genetic cultural memory. Once post-collapse recovery reached sufficient level, agriculture was rediscovered, reinvented. Psychological and cognitive evidence, innate knowledge. If we're descendants of the first civilization, we might carry psychological or cognitive traits that were useful to them, but seem excessive for Stone Age hunter-gatherers. 1. Mathematical intuition. Humans have innate mathematical capabilities that develop early. Number sense. Even infants can distinguish quantities, recognize more, less, understand basic addition, subtraction. Geometric intuition. Young children understand shapes, spatial relationships, symmetry. Pattern recognition. Humans excel at seeing patterns, rhythms, mathematical relationships. Standard explanation. These abilities evolved because they're useful for survival. Counting resources, navigating territory, predicting animal behavior, social reasoning. Reset consideration. Our mathematical abilities seem disproportionately strong for survival needs. Hunter-gatherers need basic counting and spatial reasoning, but humans can intuitively grasp complex mathematics, formal logic, abstract algebra, capabilities far beyond immediate survival needs. Possibility. Our mathematical intuition is inheritance from first civilization, where advanced mathematics was culturally embedded and possibly genetically selected for. Problem. Evolution doesn't plan ahead. Traits evolve because they're useful now, not because they might be useful for future civilizations. However, if first civilization existed for thousands or millions of years, strong mathematical selection could have occurred, and we've inherited those traits even though we didn't need them during post-collapse hunter-gatherer phase. 2. Language capacity. Human language ability is unique among animals: grammar, recursion, infinite generativity, abstract concepts. Standard explanation. Language evolved gradually over hundreds of thousands of years because communication improves social cooperation, hunting coordination, teaching. Anomaly. All human languages are roughly equally complex. Primitive languages don't exist. Every language has sophisticated grammar, thousands of words, ability to express abstract concepts. Uniformity question. Why are all languages equally complex? Shouldn't some be simpler if they evolved independently at different times? Reset interpretation. Language uniformity might reflect recent common origin, all from first civilization language, universal language capacity inherited from first civilization post-collapse Creole effect. Simplified first civilization languages served as basis for modern languages. Supporting observation. Some linguistic features, sound categories, grammatical structures, conceptual categories, appear universal or near universal across languages, suggesting deep commonality, either from shared recent ancestry or from inherited cognitive structures. 3. Technology intuition. Humans seem naturally technological. We're compelled to create tools, modify environment, build, innovate. Observation. Even young children spontaneously create tools, build structures, experiment with cause and effect. Standard explanation. Tool use evolved because it's obviously advantageous. Tools amplify capabilities, making survival easier. Reset consideration. Our technological drive might be inheritance from first civilization, where technology was culturally central for hundreds of thousands or millions of years, becoming psychologically ingrained. 4. Curiosity and science. Humans are uniquely curious. We want to understand how things work, ask why, experiment, theorize, build models of reality. Standard explanation. Curiosity evolved because understanding environment improves survival, knowing where food is, what's dangerous, how seasons work. Anomaly. Human curiosity far exceeds practical needs. We wonder about stars, atoms, abstract mathematics, philosophical questions, things with no survival value. Reset interpretation. Deep curiosity might be first civilization inheritance. They needed intense curiosity to develop advanced science and technology. We've inherited this trait even though it's excessive for hunter-gatherer life. 5. Art and aesthetics. Humans create art universally. Music, visual art, dance, storytelling. Oldest art. Cave paintings, 40,000 plus years old, carved figurines, decorated tools, body ornamentation. Observation. Art appears fully developed early. Oldest cave paintings show sophisticated technique, understanding of perspective, artistic intention. Standard explanation. Art evolved for social bonding, sexual selection, or as byproduct of cognitive abilities useful for other purposes. Reset possibility. Early art's sophistication might reflect inheritance of artistic traditions from first civilization, reawakening of cultural memory through symbolic expression, attempts to recreate or remember first civilization imagery. Specific suggestion. Some cave art might depict first civilization scenes, technology, or memories preserved through oral tradition. Geometric patterns might represent architectural forms, hand stencils might be symbolic records, animal depictions might include extinct megafauna contemporary with first civilization. 6. Archetypes and collective unconscious. Psychologist Carl Jung proposed that humans share a collective unconscious, inherited psychological structures manifesting as universal symbols, archetypes appearing in myths, dreams, art across cultures. Archetypes include the hero, the wise, old man, woman, the mother, the shadow, the anima, animus, death and rebirth, the flood, the tree of life. Jung's explanation. Archetypes emerge from accumulated human experience over evolutionary time, encoded in the inherited psychological structures. Reset interpretation. The collective unconscious might include memories or psychological imprints from first civilization. Hero, archetype, first civilization heroes who led during catastrophe. Wise, elder, first civilization knowledge keepers. Flood archetype, actual catastrophic flood that destroyed first civilization. Death, rebirth, civilizational collapse and reset. This is highly speculative. No mechanism is known for transmitting specific cultural memories through genetics. However, epigenetics has shown that some environmental experiences can be transmitted across generations through gene expression changes. Could extreme civilizational trauma leave epigenetic markers transmitted through survivors? 7. Déjà vu and false memories. Humans commonly experience déjà vu, the feeling of having experienced something before even though we know we haven't. Standard explanation: neurological glitch, memory encoding and retrieval processes overlap, creating false sense of familiarity. Speculative reset interpretation: could déjà vu sometimes represent activation of genetic or cellular memories from first civilization ancestors? When we visit ancient sites, use certain technologies, or experience particular situations, might we be triggering inherited memory traces? This is extremely speculative and not supported by neuroscience, but it illustrates how reset hypothesis could potentially explain psychological phenomena. The Fermi paradox and the Great Filter. The Fermi paradox asks, if intelligence is common in the universe, where are all the aliens? Why haven't we detected any signals or found any evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations? One proposed answer is the Great Filter, some extremely difficult step in the evolution of intelligence or development of technological civilization that very few species pass through. The filter could be behind us. Abiogenesis, life from non-life, is extremely rare. Multicellular life is extremely rare. Intelligence is extremely rare. Technological civilization is extremely rare, or the filter could be ahead of us. Nearly all technological civilizations destroy themselves before becoming spacefaring. Nearly all civilizations face insurmountable challenges: climate change, resource depletion, nuclear war, AI catastrophe. Advanced civilizations choose not to expand or communicate. Reset hypothesis connection. If Earth has repeatedly developed technological civilizations that then collapsed, this suggests the Great Filter is ahead of us, and we've already hit it multiple times. First civilization, and possibly others before them, achieved technology comparable to ours. They faced existential risks and failed to overcome them. They collapsed, and we're now rebuilding toward the same filter. This is terrifying. It means technological civilizations might regularly reach approximately our current level, then self-destruct or face insurmountable catastrophes. We're approaching the same filter that destroyed our predecessors. The repeating pattern might be universal: evolution, intelligence, civilization, technology, self-destruction, reset. This cycle might play out on every planet where intelligent life evolves. The galaxy might be full of reset civilizations at various stages, none successfully passing the filter. What was the first civilization's filter? If they collapsed, what destroyed them? Environmental collapse, climate change, resource depletion, pollution reaching irreversible levels, nuclear war, self-destruction through weapons of mass destruction, biological catastrophe, engineered pandemic, lab accident, or natural disease, AI catastrophe, artificial intelligence surpassing human control and causing extinction, astronomical disaster, asteroid impact, supervolcanic eruption, solar flare, social collapse, internal conflicts, inequality, political breakdown, preventing coordinated response to challenges, combination, multiple factors creating cascading failures. Critical question: are we heading toward the same filter? Our current trajectory shows concerning parallels. Climate change accelerating nuclear weapons still exist in thousands. Biotechnology advancing rapidly with limited oversight. AI development proceeding faster than safety research. Resource depletion. Ongoing social or political polarization increasing. If we're a reset, we need to learn from first civilization's mistakes. But we don't remember what they did wrong. We might be blindly repeating their errors. The only hope: perhaps we'll approach the filter differently or develop capabilities they lacked, allowing us to pass through where they failed. Alternatively, Perhaps the first civilization did pass the filter. They achieved sustainable civilization or transcended physical limitations, and their collapse was actually successful evolution beyond form we'd recognize. We're a reset not of their failure, but of an earlier stage in their development, following their path toward eventual transcendence. Evidence in language and writing systems. If we're a reset civilization, linguistic evidence might reveal connections to the first civilization through universal features suggesting common origin. Anomalously sophisticated early writing. Lost languages that might be first civilization remnants Proto-Indo-European (PE). Most European and many Asian languages descend from a common ancestor, Proto-Indo-European, spoken roughly 4,000–6,000 years ago in the Pontic-Caspian steppe. Reconstruction. Linguists have reconstructed P8 vocabulary and grammar through comparative analysis of descendant languages. Observation. P had sophisticated grammar, 8 or 9 cases, multiple tenses, complex verb system, right from its earliest reconstructed stage. Standard explanation. Pi represents a natural stage in language evolution, sophisticated because it descended from even earlier languages. Reset question. Could Pi be closer to first civilization language than other languages? Its geographic origin, Pontic steppe, might have been a region where first civilization knowledge better survived, and its speakers might have carried more cultural memory, manifesting in linguistic sophistication. Problem. This is highly speculative. Pi's sophistication is well explained by normal linguistic evolution. Sumerian language. Sumerian, earliest written language, 3200 BCE, is a language isolate, no known relatives. Characteristics. Agglutinative, adds many affixes to root words, complex grammar, sophisticated writing system, cuneiform, appearing fully formed. Mystery. Where did Sumerian come from? No linguistic ancestors are known. Standard explanation. Sumerian's relatives went extinct without leaving written records, or Sumerian developed in isolation long enough that its relationships to other languages became obscure. Reset possibility. Sumerian might be descended from or influenced by first civilization language, making it difficult to relate to other languages which evolved independently after the reset. Writing systems' sudden appearance. Multiple writing systems appeared suddenly in developed form, cuneiform, Sumerian, in verse 3200 BCE, appeared suddenly with hundreds of signs representing syllables, words, concepts, not simple pictographs but sophisticated system. Hieroglyphics, Egyptian, Barasjusta 3200 BCE, complex system with logograms, word symbols, and phonograms, sound symbols, appearing without clear developmental precursors. Chinese, characters, and 1200 BCE earliest evidence but possibly older. Thousands of characters in logographic system, suggesting long development, yet earliest examples already sophisticated. Standard explanation. Writing developed from accounting tokens and simple pictographs over time, but we're missing the intermediate stages because they were on perishable materials, wood, bark, cloth, that didn't survive. Reset interpretation. Writing systems appeared suddenly because they were based on rediscovered first civilization writing, adapted to new languages. The sophistication reflects underlying template from more advanced source. Linear A, Minoan, 1800–1450 BCE. Minoan civilization of Crete used Linear A writing, which remains undeciphered despite extensive study. Why can't we read it? Unknown language, not Greek, not Semitic, possibly pre-Indo-European isolate. Insufficient texts, unusual grammar or vocabulary. Reset speculation. Could Linear A be derived more directly from first civilization writing, making it difficult to decipher because it doesn't follow patterns of known languages? Indus Valley script. 2600 to 1900 BCE. The Harappan Indus Valley civilization used a script found on thousands of seals and objects, but it remains undeciphered. Characteristics. Short inscriptions, 5 to 7 symbols average, with 400 to 600 distinct signs. Appears to be a logosyllabic, combination of word symbols and sound symbols. Why undeciphered? Unknown language. Short inscriptions provide limited context. No bilingual texts, like Rosetta Stone, found. Reset consideration. The script's distinctiveness and difficulty deciphering might indicate first civilization influence making it anomalous compared to known writing systems. Rongorongo, Easter Island, possibly pre-European contact. Easter Island natives had a writing system, Rongorongo, found on wooden tablets, but it remains undeciphered. The tablets were mostly destroyed by missionaries. Only just 25 survive. Mystery. How did isolated Easter Islanders develop writing independently? Most Pacific Islander cultures were non-literate. Reset speculation. Could Rongorongo be descended from first civilization writing preserved through isolation? Problem. Easter Island was only settled 1200 Silentland CE, making ancient origin unlikely unless the script was brought from elsewhere. Linguistic universals. Despite diversity, all languages share certain features, linguistic universals. All have nouns and verbs, all have pronouns, all use word order to convey meaning, all can express past, present, future, all have negation, all can create new words through combination. Standard explanation. Universals emerge from human cognitive constraints, how our brains process information. Functional requirements. Certain concepts are universally useful. Recent common ancestry. All languages ultimately descended from common source. Reset interpretation. Linguistic. Universals might be particularly strong because all languages descend from first civilization languages. Within relatively recent time, past 100,000 years rather than 1+ million years, preserving deep structural similarities. Failed reconstructions. Linguists have attempted to reconstruct deeper language families beyond established ones. Nostratic, hypothetical macrofamily including Indo-European, Afro-Asiatic, Uralic, Altaic, and others, supposedly spoken 15,000 to 20,000 years ago. Status, controversial. Most linguists skeptical due to limited evidence and methodology concerns. Dini-Caucasian, another proposed macrofamily linking languages of Asia, Europe, and Americas. Status, very controversial. Mainstream linguistics doesn't accept it. Problem. Reconstructing languages beyond 10,000 years is extremely difficult because languages change rapidly enough that connections become undetectable through standard methods. Reset relevance. If first civilization existed 10,000 or 100,000 years ago, their language might be unreconstructable through standard methods, but might have influenced daughter languages in ways that create patterns linguists notice but can't clearly explain, like proposed macrofamilies that can't quite be proven. Consciousness and intelligence. Why are we so smart? Humans are dramatically more intelligent than necessary for hunter-gatherer survival. Why? Brain size. Human brains are just 350 Stochastic average, 3 times larger than expected for a primate of our body size. Energy cost? Brains consume 20% of our energy budget despite being 2% of body weight. Extraordinarily expensive organ. Development? Human brains develop slowly, requiring long childhood dependency and parental investment. Question. If hunter-gatherer survival could be accomplished with less intelligence, as other animals accomplish similar lifestyles, why did we evolve such expensive brains? Standard explanations. Social intelligence. Competing and cooperating in complex social groups drove intelligence evolution ecological challenges. Adapting to diverse environments required cognitive flexibility, technological feedback, tool use selected for better spatial reasoning and planning, creating positive feedback loop, reset alternative. Our intelligence isn't explained by recent selection, past 2 million years of Homo evolution, but rather by inheritance from first civilization. Scenario. First civilization existed for millions of years, creating intense selection for intelligence as cultural and technological complexity increased. The most intelligent individuals had advantages: better problem-solving, innovation, social status, reproductive success, driving continuous intelligence increase. When the first civilization collapsed, survivors retained high intelligence even though they no longer needed it for survival. We're descendants of those survivors, carrying intelligence selected for during first civilization's existence. Prediction. If this is true, we should find that intelligence-related genes show signs of strong selection in time frame matching hypothetical first civilization hundreds of thousands to millions of years ago. Actual finding. Some intelligence-related genes, ASPM, microcephalin, FOXP2, show evidence of selection in recent evolutionary time, past few 100,000 years, but exact timing and meaning are debated. Problem: distinguishing selection during first civilization from selection during natural human evolution is impossible without independent evidence of first civilization's existence. Unused potential: humans appear to have cognitive capabilities far exceeding what we use. Mathematical ability: humans can understand advanced mathematics, formal logic, abstract algebra, quantum mechanics, concepts completely irrelevant to hunter-gatherer survival. Artistic creativity: humans create complex music, visual art, literature, dance, sophisticated cultural products requiring substantial cognitive investment, but no clear survival advantage. Scientific thinking: humans can reason about atoms, galaxies, evolution, deep time, vastly beyond immediate environmental knowledge needed for survival. Language capacity: human language can express infinite concepts, embed clauses recursively, handle abstract metaphysics, far more complex than needed for basic communication. Danger: food here, let's hunt. Standard explanation: these excess capabilities are byproducts of cognitive abilities that evolved for other reasons. Mathematics is byproduct of spatial reasoning and quantity. Estimation useful for foraging. Art is byproduct of social cognition and sexual selection. Science is byproduct of causal reasoning, useful for hunting and toolmaking. Language complexity is byproduct of social communication needs. Reset alternative: these capabilities aren't byproducts but rather the intended capacities, selected for during first civilization because they were culturally valuable. We inherited full intelligence suite from first civilization, even though we only need subset for current lifestyle. Analogy: modern humans are like computers running basic programs. We're only using a fraction of our hardware capacity because we haven't rebuilt the sophisticated software, civilization, that requires full capacity. Flynn effect: IQ scores have been increasing around 3 points per decade throughout 20th century. Flynn effect. Standard explanation: rising IQ results from better nutrition, more education, environmental complexity, technology, media, urban living. Test familiarity. Observation: IQ increases show we're not operating at cognitive ceiling. We have capacity for more intelligence than we currently express. Reset interpretation: the Flynn effect might represent reactivation of latent cognitive capabilities inherited from first civilization. As our civilization becomes more complex, we're recovering cognitive capacities that were present in first civilization, but partially suppressed during post-collapse hunter-gatherer phase. Savants: some individuals, autistic savants, acquired savants after brain injury, display extraordinary abilities. Performing complex calculations instantly, memorizing vast amounts of information photographically, perfect pitch and musical ability without training, artistic genius appearing spontaneously. Question: where do these abilities come from if they're not learned? Standard explanation: these represent unusual brain organization. Typical cognitive functions are impaired, but freed neural resources enable extraordinary specific abilities. Reset speculation: could savant abilities represent genetic memory or inherited capabilities from first civilization surfacing in certain individuals? This is highly speculative and not supported by neuroscience, but it shows how reset hypothesis might explain cognitive mysteries. Childhood genius: some children display adult-level capabilities in mathematics, music, or other domains at very young ages, suggesting innate rather than learned ability. Example: Ramanujan, Indian mathematician, 1887 to 1920, developed extraordinary mathematical insights with minimal formal training, later claiming mathematical formulas came to him in dreams from the goddess Namagiri. Standard explanation: unusual genetic combinations occasionally produce exceptional neural wiring, enabling accelerated learning or intuitive understanding of specific domains. Reset speculation: could early genius represent stronger expression of inherited first civilization capabilities? Perhaps these individuals carry genetic variants that more fully preserve first civilization cognitive architecture. The archaeological silence: where is everything? The strongest argument against the reset hypothesis is the lack of clear archaeological evidence for the first civilization. If an advanced civilization existed tens of thousands or millions of years ago, where are their buildings and infrastructure, their tools and technology, their fossils, their geochemical signatures? Let's address each. 1. Buildings and infrastructure, preservation challenges, most materials degrade, wood rots in decades to centuries, metal corrodes in centuries to millennia, concrete crumbles in thousands of years, plastic breaks down in hundreds to thousands of years, erosion, wind, water, freeze-thaw cycles wear away surface structures, mountains erode completely in tens of millions of years, cities erode to nothing in millions of years, sedimentation, structures get buried under sediment, soil, vegetation. After thousands of years, sites are completely covered. Plate tectonics, subduction zones recycle crust into mantle. Any structures on subducted crust are destroyed. Continental collision crumples and metamorphoses rock, destroying structures. Biological activity. Plants break up structures with roots. Burrowing animals disrupt sites. Microbes break down organic materials. What might survive? Stone structures in geologically stable arid regions, protected from water erosion and vegetation. Buried structures protected by rapid sedimentation. Underwater structures in anoxic, oxygen-free environments. Structures in caves or underground. Very large-scale modifications to landscape. Quarries, canals, levelled mountains. Have we looked thoroughly? We've excavated 0.01% of Earth's surface archaeologically. Most seafloor is unexplored areas under ice. Antarctica, Greenland, are inaccessible. Deep cave systems largely unexplored. We're not specifically looking for evidence of ancient civilizations in geological strata, because mainstream archaeology doesn't expect to find any conclusion. Lack of found structures doesn't prove absence. It might just mean we haven't looked in right places or recognized what we've found. 2. Tools and technology, preservation. Stone tools survive millions of years. We have stone tools from 3.3 million years ago. Metal tools corrode. Iron rusts completely in centuries to millennia depending on environment. Synthetic materials, plastics, composites, break down in centuries to millennia. Advanced materials, ceramics, glass, certain alloys, can survive longer but become unrecognizable as they weather. Question: if first civilization had advanced technology, why no metal artifacts in ancient strata? Possible answers: deep strata. First civilization artifacts would be in geological layers millions of years old, rarely accessed by mining or excavation recycling. Metal artifacts, if found, might be unrecognized as artificial. Corrosion makes them look like natural ore, or might be recycled by later peoples, ancient metal artifacts found and melted down for reuse. Limited search. We're not systematically examining geological strata for technological artifacts because we don't expect to find any alternative materials. First civilization might have used materials that degrade completely, bio-based materials, materials designed to decompose, materials we don't recognize as technological. OOPArts, out-of-place artifacts, revisited. Various claimed out-of-place artifacts might represent first civilization technology, but most turn out to be hoaxes, objects deliberately planted. Misidentifications, natural formations or modern contamination. Misdating, strata age incorrectly determined. No verified case exists of clearly technological artifact in multi-million-year-old geological strata. 3. Fossils. If the first civilization was human or hominid, we should find their fossils. Fossil preservation, fossilization is rare, requires specific conditions, rapid burial, mineralization. Most organisms don't fossilize. Only a tiny fraction of individuals become fossils. Most fossils are destroyed by geological processes before being found human hominid fossil record. We have relatively few hominid fossils considering millions of years of evolution. Many species are known from only a few individuals. Some species might be completely missing from fossil record possibility. If first civilization existed, we might have found some fossils but not recognized them as distinct from other hominids, or we might not have found any fossils from them yet. Alternatively, first civilization might have been a hominid species already known, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, etc., but at a more advanced developmental stage than we recognize. We might have their bones but not realize those individuals lived in technological civilization. 4. Geochemical signatures. The Silurian hypothesis, discussed earlier, shows that industrial civilization leaves geochemical signatures, carbon isotope spikes from fossil fuel, burning radioactive isotopes from nuclear technology, heavy metal pollution plastics in sediment layers, mass extinction events, rapid climate change in ice cores and sediment records. Have we found any such signatures? Possible candidates: Paleocene-Eocene thermal. Maximum PTM 56 million years ago. Rapid carbon release, warming, ocean acidification. Could be industrial activity, but most geologists attribute to volcanism or methane release. Other carbon excursions. Several periods in Earth's history show rapid carbon cycle changes. Some might be natural, some might be industrial civilizations, but distinguishing them is difficult. Extinction events. Earth has experienced multiple mass extinctions. Could any be caused by ancient industrial civilizations? Most have clear natural causes: asteroid impact, volcanism, climate change. But couldn't an industrial civilization cause similar effects? Problem: natural processes can create all the same signatures as industrial civilization. Without additional evidence, artifacts, structures, fossils, we can't distinguish natural events from civilizational activity. Time frame matters. Isotopic signatures decay. After tens of millions of years, even plutonium-244, 80 million year half-life, becomes difficult to detect. A first civilization from 100+ million years ago would leave almost no detectable isotopic signature. 5. Why haven't we found them? Accidentally. We've mined deeply, drilled extensively, excavated for construction. If first civilization ruins existed, wouldn't we have found them by accident? Possible explanations. We have found them but didn't recognize them. Anomalous structures dismissed as natural formations. Artifacts misidentified as geological features deep enough to avoid. Most mining and drilling is 5 kilometers deep. First civilization structures might be deeper, or in locations we don't mine, rare. Survival. Even if first civilization structures exist, they're rare enough that probability of encountering them during random mining or excavation is low. Suppression. Some discoveries are made but suppressed by governments, companies or organizations for various reasons: protecting mainstream narratives, national security, commercial interests. The suppression explanation is popular in alternative communities but difficult to evaluate. By nature, suppression is hidden, so lack of evidence for suppression doesn't disprove it, but this makes the claim unfalsifiable. Conclusion on archaeological silence. The lack of clear evidence for first civilization is a serious problem for the hypothesis. However, evidence preservation over millions of years is extremely rare. We've searched only a tiny fraction of Earth comprehensively. We're not specifically looking for ancient civilizations in geological strata. Natural processes can destroy nearly all evidence given enough time. The absence of evidence is weak evidence of absence when preservation is rare and search is limited, but it's still evidence. The burden of proof remains on those claiming first civilization existed to find positive evidence, not just explain away negative evidence, living as a reset, practical implications. If we accept the reset hypothesis as a possibility worth considering, what does it mean for how we live, think, and plan our future? 1. We're not special. Human exceptionalism dissolves. We're not the first intelligence on Earth, not pioneering uncharted territory, not unique in Earth's history. This could be humbling, recognizing we're part of a larger pattern, not the apex of creation. Relieving, we're not alone in facing existential challenges, others faced them before us. Sobering, if they failed, we might fail too. History is longer than we thought. If reset hypothesis is true, human history extends far beyond 10,000 years, potentially millions of years, with most history lost. Implications. Our recorded history is a tiny fraction of actual human experience. We've forgotten more than we remember. Civilizations rise and fall as regular pattern, not exception. 3. Progress isn't guaranteed. Linear progress narratives assume civilization steadily advances toward better futures. Reset hypothesis shows civilizations can collapse completely, progress can reverse, we can lose all achievements and have to start over. This changes planning horizons. Long-term thinking becomes more important, avoiding collapses that would require reset. Preserving knowledge becomes critical. How do we prevent knowledge loss if collapse occurs? Identifying existential risks becomes urgent. What destroyed first civilization? Are we heading towards same fate? 4. We might be repeating mistakes. If we're following similar developmental trajectory to first civilization, we might be making the same mistakes they made. Current concerns that might parallel their experience: climate change, altering planetary environment beyond recovery, nuclear weapons, capability for self-annihilation, AI development, creating intelligence beyond our control, biotechnology, engineering pathogens, or irreversibly modifying biosphere resource depletion, exhausting resources needed for advanced civilization, social breakdown, inequality, polarization, conflict preventing cooperation. The critical question: can we identify the mistake that destroyed them and avoid it? Problem: we don't know what destroyed them, so we don't know what to avoid. We're fumbling in the dark, hoping we don't repeat their fatal error. 5. There might be answers in the past. If first civilization left records, finding them could provide technical knowledge, advanced technology. We haven't rediscovered scientific understanding, solutions to problems we're currently researching. Warnings, information about what destroyed them and how to avoid it. Guidance, wisdom about managing civilization and existential risks. Where to look: deep geological strata, protected environments, caves, sealed chambers, Arctic, Antarctic ice. Encoded in mythology or ancient texts, preserved in oral traditions of indigenous peoples, hidden in plain sight, monuments, alignments, mathematical relationships. The search for first civilization knowledge could be humanity's most important archaeological quest, potentially finding information that could prevent our civilization's collapse. 6. We should preserve knowledge. If reset cycles are real, preventing knowledge loss becomes critical. How to preserve knowledge for millions of years, stone monuments, information carved in durable stone, placed in geologically stable locations, multiple copies, distributed widely so some survive even if others are destroyed, simple encoding, mathematical and pictorial information, understandable even if language is lost. Protected archives, sealed chambers, time capsules, buried repositories, genetic encoding, potentially encoding information in DNA of organisms, speculative but possible with advanced biotechnology, oral traditions, teaching through myth, story, ritual, less precise but very durable. Current efforts: memory of mankind, archive in salt mine, Hallstatt, Austria, preserving cultural records on ceramic tablets for thousands of years. Long Now Foundation, building 10,000-year clock and other long-term thinking projects. Svalbard Global Seed Vault, preserving crop genetic diversity in Arctic permafrost. Various time capsules and archives, scattered attempts to preserve information for future. These efforts are tiny compared to what's needed. If collapse occurred, most knowledge would be lost. We need systematic planetary-scale knowledge preservation if we want to prevent reset. 7. Breaking the cycle. If resets are cyclical, can we break the cycle? Possible strategies: become spacefaring, establish permanent presence on Moon, Mars, asteroids, eventually other star systems. If Earth civilization collapses, off-world colonies survive, preserving knowledge and eventually reseeding Earth. Achieve sustainability. Develop truly sustainable civilization that doesn't deplete resources, doesn't alter climate catastrophically, doesn't generate existential risks. Live in balance indefinitely. Transcend physicality. Upload consciousness to non-biological substrates. Exist as digital entities. Transcend dependency on planetary biosphere. Highly speculative but potentially possible. Manage existential risks. Carefully control development of dangerous technologies, AI, biotechnology, nuclear, prevent wars and catastrophes, navigate risks successfully. Reach technological singularity. Achieve technological capabilities so far beyond current level that existential risks become manageable. Advanced nanotechnology, molecular manufacturing, arbitrary energy generation, climate engineering, asteroid defense, etc. Any of these strategies could potentially break the reset cycle, allowing civilization to persist indefinitely rather than collapsing and resetting. 8. Meaning and purpose. What does reset hypothesis mean for existential meaning? Pessimistic interpretation. Life is meaningless. We're trapped in eternal cycle, doomed to repeat the same patterns, never achieving lasting progress. Our achievements are temporary, destined to be forgotten and rebuilt endlessly. Optimistic interpretation. Each cycle is an opportunity. Even if we don't succeed this time, another cycle will try again. Eventually, some cycle will break through, achieving lasting civilization. Our efforts contribute to the larger pattern, increasing odds that future cycle succeeds. Tragic interpretation. We're inheriting the consequences of the first civilization's mistakes without knowledge of what they did wrong. We're punished for sins we don't remember committing. Hopeful interpretation. We're given a second chance, or third, or 100th. Each reset is an opportunity to do better, to learn, to eventually get it right. Philosophical question. Does cyclical existence have meaning, or does meaning require linear progress toward ultimate goal? Various philosophical and religious traditions address this. Hindu, Buddhist, cycle of rebirth, samsara, has meaning because it leads toward enlightenment and escape from cycle Nietzsche. Eternal return. If you would willingly live the same life repeatedly forever, you've achieved meaningful existence. Existentialism. Meaning is created by our choices and actions, regardless of whether those actions persist beyond our lives. Closing. Awakening to the pattern. As you settle into sleep tonight, perhaps you'll dream not of humans as newcomers to civilization, but as ancient beings, walking a path we've walked before, using tools we've used before in different forms, speaking languages descended from languages our ancestors spoke millions of years ago, building civilizations following patterns established so long ago that we think we're inventing them when we're actually remembering them. Perhaps you'll dream of the first civilization at their peak, not so different from us, facing the same questions, the same challenges, the same existential risks we face now, standing at the same crossroads where one path leads to lasting success and another leads to collapse and reset, making their choice, living with consequences, eventually falling victim to whatever destroyed them. And perhaps you'll see us making the same choices, following the same path, approaching the same cliff they fell from, unaware that we're repeating a pattern because we've lost all memory of their experience. Perhaps you'll dream of survivors, the people who lived through the collapse of the first civilization, who watched everything they'd built crumble, who lost family, friends, knowledge, technology, comfort, safety, who were reduced to scrambling for survival in a post-apocalyptic world, who tried desperately to preserve some fragment of their civilization's knowledge for descendants they'd never meet, carving information into stone, encoding it in myths and rituals, building monuments that might survive to tell the story, hoping that someday, somehow, the future would understand. And perhaps you'll dream of us now, standing on the brink of either breakthrough or collapse, holding in our hands technologies that could save us or destroy us, facing challenges that could elevate us to lasting civilization or trigger another reset, carrying in our genes and our psychology the inheritance of those who came before us, unknowing, unremembering, but perhaps beginning to sense that we've been here before, that the path feels familiar, that something in our collective unconscious recognizes the pattern, even if our conscious minds don't. Or perhaps you'll dream of the pattern itself, the eternal cycle of rise and fall, of achievement and loss, of civilization building to peaks then collapsing to valleys, of knowledge gained and lost and regained, of humans, or our ancestors, or whoever we truly are, repeating the journey from simplicity to complexity, back to complexity across geological time. With each cycle learning a little more, preserving a little more knowledge, getting a little closer to the breakthrough that would allow lasting civilization, climbing an evolutionary ladder where each rung is a complete civilizational arc, slowly, painfully, blindly, working our way towards some ultimate goal we can't yet perceive. And perhaps as you dream, you'll realize that whether we're a reset or not, whether the first civilization existed or not, the questions remain the same. How? Do we build civilization that lasts? How do we overcome existential risks? How do we preserve knowledge across deep time? How do we avoid the mistakes that destroy civilizations? How do we give meaning to our brief individual lives within the vast sweep of historical time? These questions matter regardless of whether we're asking them for the first time or the 100th time. The answers matter regardless of whether we're pioneering new territory or retracing ancient footsteps. Our choices matter regardless of whether we're the first intelligence on Earth or the latest iteration in a long series of resets. Sleep well, inhabitant of the reset. whether that's what you are or not. Sleep well, carrier of ancient genes that have seen civilizations rise and fall more times than you remember. Sleep well, builder of the latest chapter in Earth's long story of intelligence emerging, flourishing, collapsing, and emerging again, each time a little different, each time carrying forward some fragment of what came before, each time hoping this time will be different, this time will last, this time we'll get it right. Tomorrow you'll wake in a world that might be older than you've been taught, carrying history longer than you've been told, standing on ground that has supported civilizations before and will support civilizations again after ours passes. Tomorrow you'll use tools that feel like inventions but might be rediscoveries. Tomorrow you'll face challenges that feel unprecedented but might be ancient patterns repeating. Tomorrow you'll make choices that feel unique to our moment but might be choices our predecessors made with different outcomes. And perhaps tomorrow, armed with the possibility that we're a reset, you'll look at our civilization differently. You'll see our technology not as unprecedented achievement, but as milestone we've possibly reached before. You'll see our existential risks not as unique to our time, but as ancient filters we've possibly failed before. You'll see our choices not as occurring in vacuum, but as part of a larger pattern we're only beginning to recognize. And perhaps that recognition that we might be a reset, that we might be repeating patterns, that we might be heading toward fates our predecessors suffered, will motivate us to choose differently, to learn from the past even though we don't remember it, to avoid the mistakes that destroyed them even though we don't know what those mistakes were, to finally, after however many resets have occurred, break the cycle and achieve lasting civilization. Good night, reset civilization, if that's what we are. Good night, humans who might be older than you know, carrying deeper history than you've been taught, inheriting abilities and tendencies and knowledge from sources you've forgotten. Good night, builders of civilization who might be rebuilding rather than building, rediscovering, rather than discovering, remembering rather than inventing. The pattern continues, the cycle turns, and we, awake or asleep, aware or unaware, continue walking the path, making our choices, creating our future, determining whether this time, this cycle, this iteration will finally be the one that breaks through to lasting existence, or whether we'll collapse like those before us, leaving our own distant descendants to rebuild and wonder, and perhaps eventually realize, as we're beginning to realize, that they're not the first. They're a reset carrying forward the eternal human project of building civilization across the vast stretches of time, falling and rising, dying and being reborn, until finally, someday, some cycle achieves what all previous cycles attempted: permanent survival, lasting knowledge, eternal civilization, transcendence of the cycle itself. Sweet dreams of ancient times and forgotten civilizations, of first peoples who walked before us and left marks we don't recognize, of patterns repeating across time deeper than mountains and longer than species, of the reset that we are and the breakthrough we might become. May morning bring renewed determination to learn from the past we don't remember, to avoid the mistakes we can't identify, to preserve the knowledge we're still rebuilding, and to finally break free from the cycle of rise and fall, creation and destruction, civilization and collapse that has defined Earth's history since intelligence first emerged. Sleep well, dream deep. The reset continues, the cycle turns, and tomorrow we continue the ancient work of building civilization, whether for the first time or the 1,000th, whether as pioneers or as echoes, whether as originals or as resets. Good night, humanity. Good night, inheritors of the deep past. Good night, participants in the greatest pattern of all, the eternal cycle of intelligence attempting to understand itself, preserve itself, and transcend the limitations that have destroyed it before. The first civilization is sleeping beneath our feet, perhaps, in geological strata so deep and so old that we might never find them, but we carry them in our genes, in our psychology, in our myths, in our unconscious knowledge that we've done all this before and might do it all again forever until we finally learn the lesson that breaks the cycle and sets us free. Rest well. Tomorrow, the work continues. Tomorrow we build. Tomorrow we choose. Tomorrow we determine whether this reset succeeds where previous ones failed. Tomorrow we write the next chapter in the oldest story on Earth. The story of intelligence trying, failing, trying again, never giving up, never surrendering, always rebuilding, always hoping that this time we'll get it right. Good night.